Hi guys, today I want to talk to you about studying abroad because it's probably the thing I get the most questions about. In case you're wondering about my experience, when I was 14 I went to France for 2 weeks. When I was 15 I went to the US for 6 months. When I was 17 I went on a gap year and traveled to a lot of different places, and I just recently finished a 3-year bachelor's degree here in London where I currently live. So I have a lot of experience to draw from. Let's get into it. What made you study abroad? That first trip to France really scared me, and I was really hesitant to go on it because I had never been to a different country by myself. But ultimately I ended up having an amazing time, and once I was immersed in the language and the culture, I quickly adapted to it as well, and I think that helped me go to the US a year later. For me, it was never about improving my language skills. My reason to go study abroad was always more about experiencing a different life in a different country. I was sort of curious about that. And looking back, I think I was trying to find a place that would fit me and where I would fit in. And I ended up finding it here in London, and France led to the US, and the US led to my gap year, and my gap year led me here. So it all worked out. I think there is no wrong answer why you should go study abroad, and everyone has a different reason to go study abroad. How to pick a country, or why I went to the US. I went to the US because I had this glorified idea of what the country would be like based on television. I would advise you not to do what I did and look more deeply into the country that you want to go to, do your research, maybe look for some alternatives as well. It might not be your first choice country or the first country you look at that fits you best. Maybe I would have been a better fit for Canada. I just never looked into it, so definitely do your research and don't base your idea of a country off of the OC, like I did. How to prepare. Like I said, I watched a lot of American television, and while you shouldn't base your idea of a country off of it, it does help to immerse yourself in the pop culture of the country that you're going to. It helps you in general conversation and to better understand what people are talking about. I watched a lot of news coverage or political satire and late night, and that really helped me. I also would advise you to really build a relationship with the host family that you're going to be staying with. I was placed late, and so I was only able to exchange maybe one email and didn't really know much about the family that I was going to stay with. If you have a chance to, Skype, FaceTime, email, WhatsApp, definitely just kind of start talking to them so that you feel sort of familiar when you get there. It just helps with the transition. If you struggle in terms of language, television also really helps to just feel at ease with the language. Maybe try and speak the language more often in your daily life. Before you go, it just helps with the transition. How to adapt to a new culture. Be open to new experiences and do as the locals do. For me, being in Atlanta, that meant going to football games and tailgating or going to Disneyland. But it also means more nuanced things like how to talk about religion and politics in a state like Georgia, or how to address adults. The polite chit-chat in the US is very different from how we talk to each other in Germany, so I had to learn a lot in that regard. I think the best advice I can give you is to really observe and then adapt. How to overcome the language barrier, both at home and in school. I think the most important thing is to not be afraid or embarrassed. Don't hold back. You really just have to chat away, and that's hard to do in school, so I would definitely advise you to start at home and with your host family. Just chat away and get comfortable with a language. The first 2 weeks are going to be exhausting. It takes a lot of brain power to make that switch to a different language all day, let alone for 2 weeks. But at some point you're going to settle in, and it's going to become just a habit, and you're going to catch yourself not really thinking about what you're saying or making that internal translation. And that's really nice as well. And after 3 months, I started thinking in English and I started dreaming in English, and that's an amazing feeling. So don't be afraid, just, chat away. How to make friends. My high school was huge and busy. It was about 5 times the size of my school back home in Germany, and I was just sort of thrown into the mix. On top of it, I was placed in both junior and sophomore classes, so for the entire time I was there, I was sort of stuck between 2 age groups and between 2 grades, and that really didn't help. I think the first 2 weeks for me weren't fun. They were not great. I would advise you to ask your school to first of all place you in only sophomore or junior classes so that you see a couple more familiar faces in your class every day. And also ask them if they can have someone show you around and introduce you, because it just makes things easier. On top of that, I would advise you to attend extracurricular stuff like yearbook or sports in the afternoon. I didn't get to play high school sports because the season for soccer had already ended. So I played club and I got to see the same 20 girls every evening and made great friends there. So that really helps as well. Is it expensive? Yes and no. I believe there are ways to study abroad that are less expensive. But the traditional way is to do it through an organization like EF. That's the company I used. They organized your flight and your visa for $5,000 to $6,000. EF did an okay job, they just weren't very hands-on once I was there. But that's obviously a lot of money, and if you can't afford to spend that kind of money on a semester abroad, there are financial aid programs in place. Or if you know someone that lives abroad in a country that you would like to study in, I know several people who independently organize their year abroad, and that obviously saved them a lot of money. So definitely look into that as well. What did you learn? I learned a lot about myself. Being away from everything that's familiar to you really helps you figure out who you are, even at such a young age, because it's very liberating. I learned that I can be incredibly strong and independent. I learned that I can find my place in a new country and a new culture, and I ultimately learned where I fit in best. I'm incredibly grateful for my experiences, but I also learned how to overcome kind of really hard parts of it. I definitely recommend you study abroad. It's an incredible experience, but just keep in mind that, like everything in life, studying abroad also has its ups and downs. That's really all the advice I can give you. If you are currently studying abroad or you're thinking of studying abroad, I wish you all the best, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.